So many stories like that in the last few days. You saw the story in Durban. You'll know what's been happening on the road down to Richards Bay as well, where so many trucks have been queuing to deliver coal because of the problems with Transnet and high energy prices around the world. Meanwhile, the Road Freight Association writing an open letter to the new Transport Minister, Sindisiwe Chikunga, to ask her to try and deal with some of these problems. Gavin Kelly is the CEO of the Road Freight Association. Gavin, good afternoon to you. What do you believe the new minister needs to focus on?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon to all your viewers. Yeah, we've highlighted a couple of things, Stephen, and one of them has been a recurring theme. I'm sure you've reported about it a number of times, and that is dealing with the non-compliant transporters, in our case, in road freight, in the road freight industry, dealing with the non-compliant transporters who seem to be able to operate without roadworthy vehicles and cause the mayhem that you've seen recently.
I mean, this issue of unroadworthy vehicles is a major issue. Do we need more stops? Do we need more trucks to be stopped more often? And I can imagine some people in your industry would be quite frustrated if their drivers were stopped every 2 minutes.
Well, yes, it's a very good question, Stephen. So what happens in the normal run-of-the-mill is that every year a truck needs to go for a roadworthy inspection or a roadworthy test and to be certified that it meets the minimum requirements and is safe to operate on a road. But obviously there needs to be a far more amount of frequent tests of trucks, and that isn't happening as it should happen. And perhaps what needs to happen is that the various authorities need to do two things at least. The first is, in those areas where they've seen an increase in incidents and crashes, where there have been reports of faulty brakes, etc., perhaps they should have far more testing or checking areas in those routes or along those routes in the country. The second thing is, if there are frequent offenders or frequent operators being involved in crashes, perhaps they should check those vehicles and those fleets far more regularly.
There's an issue, I mean, we've been talking just a moment ago, a report about this driver involved in what happened in Umhlanga, and the reports I've seen suggest that he's just 22. Now, Gavin, if I were 22, I'd be wanting a job, I'd be taking any job there is. If I could get a heavy-duty truck license, I would grab it with both hands. But I still, as a slightly older person now, wonder if it's really correct that a 22-year-old should be in charge of, frankly, so much
Sorry,
waste.
Stephen, I lost you there. Did you say 22?
That was yes, 22. That was my understanding. And I wondered if age is a part of this.
Okay, so in terms of driving a heavy motor vehicle, if this is a dangerous goods vehicle, in other words, transporting chemicals or fuel, you need to be a minimum of 25 years old. If you are younger than that, you would be driving a vehicle that perhaps would not have dangerous goods in it. So it would be passengers, or it could be coal, it could be wood. And unfortunately, in those instances, 18 years old is the minimum requirement for a license in terms of goods. So 22 years old doesn't sound incorrect. Of course, the question is did he have a PRDP?
That I don't know at this stage.
That's where the requirement comes in. In certain classes of vehicles, you need to be 25 to get a professional driving permit. So that young person should not have been driving that vehicle.
Okay. We'll also get confirmation on those reports. This all takes us to another issue, which is that if you look at the way that truck drivers and the revenue works in the trucking industry, it won't work like this in all companies, but clearly the people who are driving these trucks are under immense pressure. The more they carry, the more they get, the more their companies get, the more money they get for their families. And Gavin, you and I both know that means the faster they're going to go.
Well, of course, that's a big problem, isn't it? And we've seen that happening along the Pongola Road as well. So in the first instance, these vehicles can't travel faster than 80 kilometers an hour. That's their maximum speed. On many of these routes, they cannot even attain that as an average speed, so it's far lower. But the biggest problem is, and that's what we've started to find in a number of cases, is that the drivers are not paid the minimum set wages. They're paid per trip, which then pushes them into this cycle of trying to drive these trips or their daily trips as fast as they can to get backwards and forwards to earn their pay or get remunerated per trip. So that is a cause for concern, and that's something else we need to deal with.
Do you believe the new minister is going to be listening to you? Are you going to be invited to a talk soon? There's an awful lot to sort out in your industry at the moment, and all of this has a bigger impact on greater society.
I'm a positive and pragmatic person, Stephen. I believe that the minister will listen to what we have to say. She doesn't have to meet with us. Obviously, we'd like to meet with her. We've known her for some time as a deputy minister under the previous Minister of Transport, Dipuo Peters, and under Fikile Mbalula. I believe she is going to meet with us. What we're saying are practical things. We're raising some of the core issues, and I'm sure that we will get some of these resolved in the not too distant future.
Gavin Kelly, thank you, CEO of the Road Freight Association. Really appreciate the time.